Thanks so much, Silva, and good to be part of this exciting capacity building sessions. Next up, we've got Celia Burgas from Cienzano and Université Libre de Bruxelles, who will be talking about her work with Stephanie, I believe, from INFORMAS, on a new food systems policy index, work that is still ongoing and which has been presented a couple of times at conferences this year, but is brand new, and I'm quite eager to hear more about this body of work. Celia, when you are online, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Also, thanks for this amazing presentation. I'm just going to share my screen in the meantime. I also wanted to say that it's a pity Stephanie is not going to be able to be here today with us, but she wanted to actually be here and she was going to be the one presenting, and I will do it because it's a project that we have been working together for the last 2.5 years. Time goes by fast. So what we have been developing is actually part, indeed, as Peter just said, of the new tools developed by INFORMAS. INFORMAS is very famous for many things that they have been doing in the last years. And in 2013, they did the food EPI. And you know about that because it's, of course, about food environments. And now we are working in this new tool. So I'm going to tell you what we have been doing. Well, the background information is basically this article in The Lancet, in which Boyd and other authors introduced the global syndemic. This new term to describe this between 3 ongoing pandemics at the moment. That is the pandemic of obesity and diet-related non-communicable diseases, then the pandemic of undernutrition with food insecurity, but not only, also micronutrient deficiencies, and then the one of climate change. And they were associating these pandemics together, how it has an impact on planetary health, but also on human health. And they were calling for governments to take action on this. And they were also providing some recommendations for policymakers that they could implement that could be beneficial for these 3 ongoing pandemics. And because of this whole idea of the background, it's actually how the project started. The idea of actually expanding the existing tool, the food EPI, and how that has an impact on obesity, but also to see if actually some of the measures that can be implemented by governments to actually tackle the problem related to obesity and non-communicable diseases could also have beneficial effect on undernutrition and also climate change. So this is really the interlink. As you know, there are many issues at the moment related to actually climate change and also malnutrition in all its forms. It's not only the increase in actually all the countries in the world of unhealthy ultra-processed foods, but
Celia,
it's also the part that...
Celia, sorry to interrupt. I think your slides are not moving.
Oh, really? Okay. Which slide are you seeing right now then?
We see the slides, but it is not in presentation mode.
Okay, we'll stop sharing and try again. Let me see. Thanks for telling me. So now I'm going to share my entire screen. Now, can you see my slide? It's the one on background with the paper from the Lancet. Okay. And now if I change, can you see the next one of introduction?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for this. I didn't realize that. So what I was saying is that there is not only the part related to public health concerns and everything related to malnutrition, but there is also the additional problem of everything that happens when we produce our food. So this is more not so much about food environments, but the part before, what happens before actually the food is part of our environment, everything that is related to the food supply chain. What happens actually when we are actually producing our food. So this is really the background information. And one of the goals of this project is to actually make sure that governments are there to create healthy diets from sustainable food systems, because the change of our diet is really one of the most impactful ways to actually address this global syndemic. So we are really calling for a food systems change. And in order to explain the food system, even if probably you're already much familiarized with it, but it really goes beyond the food environment. It's really all of the web of activities that connects everything that goes from farm to fork, but also beyond, like even the disposal of food is included in this. So it's all of the web of activities that link each step of this perfect cycle, from production to processing, from distribution to packaging to marketing, labeling, um, the placement in the stores, the prices of food, to the eventual consumption by the consumer, and then the disposal. And I really like this figure. It's actually done by GAIN, the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition. And I think it's fantastic because you can really see how everything is interconnected. And I will invite you all to have a look at it in more detail when you can. So the goal of the project that Stephanie and I have been working on for the last 2 years is really to develop a policy index that is able to monitor government's actions towards healthier, more equitable, and sustainable food systems. It's based on the food epi, but it goes beyond that. And in order to do it, to develop this tool, we actually divided the project in 5 steps. And I'm going to explain them to you a little bit more in detail. So the first step was a compilation of recommendations but at international level. Then we conducted a scoping review in order to see the effect and the effectiveness of these policies. After that, in order to fill the gaps, we did an expert consultation through surveys and different workshops. Then we have pilot tested that through a policy mapping. And then the last step is the stakeholders interviews. Right now, we are actually already in step 4 and 5. We are just towards the end of the project. So it's quite interesting because I have some interesting results to share with you. So first, it was the compilation of recommendations. We did this at the beginning of the project, so in 2021. That's why most of them are actually from 2019 and a little bit during that period. But well, there was a lot of information at the moment, and we decided to start by that. We gathered all of the reports that we could find and guidelines and recommendations, including scientific papers that were actually giving recommendations for governments at global level, so that they were not specific for a country or for a region, but that they were like that could be applicable for any government around the world, in order to either address undernutrition, obesity, or climate change. Some of focusing on children, like the one of UNICEF, and most of them were actually for the general population. And some were focusing more in the area of environmental sustainability, like, for instance, the IPCC one. And others were really looking more at the part of undernutrition, like the one of the OECD. So it was a good balance. And we compile of all of these recommendations they were in total 23. And what we did is that we extracted from each of these report or guideline or scientific article the different recommendations that they were providing for governments. And once we had them all together, we classified them per area. So that's how we were able to identify the 10 areas that you can see here in the screen. So everything that goes for food production is basically agriculture, and then the name of the other areas, they are basically, you can see them there. They are quite a lot. It's important to say that the last 6 areas were actually also part of the food epi, so that makes it a little bit easier. And the other ones were really like everything related to the supply chain. And what we did is that first we classified these recommendations, and then we merged them according to the specific areas they were talking about. So if there were a lot of recommendations around fertilizers, then we will actually merge them into a specific proposed policy. So that's actually how we ended up having the merged recommendations. Then the second step was actually we conducted a scoping review to see which was the evidence of all of these recommendations. So taking into account the different areas that we had identified, we used those areas as key terms for the search strategy. And then we went to see if the recommendations that the experts were actually giving, if they had already been implemented in some countries or regions around the world, and if so, which was their effect. So we gathered quite a lot of information because the scoping review had in total almost 200 reviews. And we, as I said, divided per area, we wanted to see their effect. And their effect could be positive, like it could have a beneficial effect in one of the outcomes, for instance, in undernutrition or in obesity or in climate change. It could also be neutral, like which meant like even once the policy or the intervention had been implemented, it didn't have any specific change in the outcome that we were studying. It could have a negative effect. Or then we also realized that there were many areas that were really research gaps, and others in which some articles and some reviews were identifying one effect while the other one was not identifying the same effect, so then was inconclusive. And we actually, this scoping review is published, so you can find it online. But we gathered this information, so divided per policy area. We also had the primary outcomes and the secondary outcomes, and we really analyzed which was the effect of all of these interventions and policies on undernutrition, obesity, and environmental sustainability. We also included nutritional vulnerabilities and women's empowerment as secondary outcomes because they were not the main area of focus, but we also wanted to see if the information was there available, which was the effect of the policies in those. And after that, in order to, as you can see in this table that I hope you are seeing, there are still many gaps. So everything that is with a 0, you can see there is a lot of information that we still don't have, mainly related to food loss and waste, that I must say is actually quite a recent topic. So it was really not there not many countries have implemented a lot of measures. Some of them have, but they were not included as reviews. Maybe there are some primary studies, but nothing that we could really identify. And then everything that is related to the food environment, like composition, labeling or marketing, that was no information for instance, the effect on undernutrition, and many of it neither for the effect on environmental sustainability. So in order to make sure that we could still have information about those gaps, what we did is that we had like an expert consultation. So we started by a survey in which different experts from around the world had to assess their perceived effect, but also effectiveness of the policies that we were proposing, that were 46. And they could also provide comments. So they really had to rate each of the policies that we were proposing according to all of the outcomes, especially that was divided between food supply chains and food environments. And then we were also listening to what they had to add, or actually they were recommending to remove, or if there was actually information available that could help us. So that's really how we did it at the beginning with the survey. But very soon we realized, when analyzing the results of the survey, that it will actually be even very interesting if, instead of just a survey, we could also bring together all of the experts for them to discuss openly. So that's why we decided to organize, after the survey, also workshops. They were regional, and that was really to make sure that all of the experts together, we were seated in a room that it was virtual, but everyone could really provide information and give feedback on the effectiveness, but also on the synergies or potential trade-offs that the policies that we were recommending actually had. And for doing that, we did 4 workshops in different languages. So we did, the first one was in Europe, the second one in Latin America, the third one was in East Africa, and then the fourth one was in West Africa. However, well, I'm saying very fast, East and West Africa. It's true that, for instance, experts from Ghana and Nigeria were actually taking part in the one of East Africa because that was the one organized in English. Where we got feedback from around 100 energies, trade-offs, how it could be more effective. And provided, we came up with 44 policies towards creating sustainable food systems. And I'm going to give you one example of one policy. This one is related to fertilizers. They are really like, it's something that it's an indicator, that's something that a government has done, so you can really go through it. It's very similar to the food epi, and understand and benchmark to see if actually that has happened. And there are a total of 44. The paper has not been published yet, but you can see it there in this slide, because there is actually right now under review. And if you click on that link, you can also see the table with all of the proposed policies. And right now, what we are doing, well, we have just finalized this step. This is the one of the policy mapping. So together with countries in both East and West Africa, our partners from there have been doing this policy mapping, both at national and at local levels. So each team of the country had to choose a specific city or region or municipality in which they also wanted to do the map to see if actually they had implemented policies in this area. So you can see the cities and the countries here. And this process has taken a long time. The good news, there are a lot of policies that have been implemented for the area of agriculture, particularly to, of course, undernutrition and climate change. But there are also some interventions that have been implemented to prevent obesity. It's very interesting because there have been many programs in schools. However, there are some areas that stay that were actually so many policies that have not been implemented, like everything that is related to marketing or labeling that was not there in any of the countries. We don't have, I'm not going to show the tables yet because we are right now working on the analysis, but it's actually very interesting to see the part of agriculture because there are a lot of lessons to learn from there. And what we are also working on the moment that right now we have just finalized conducting them is semi-structured interviews. So we have a total of 64 because we selected the stakeholders from both national and local levels. And each country conducted 8 interviews. And the goal of these interviews was really to see which have been or which can be the barriers and the facilitators, both for the development of these public policies or for the implementation. And that's really what we're working on at the moment. So once we collect the data from these potential barriers, we are going to go again through the list of policies that we are going to include in the new policy index. We are going to make changes if needed based on the information gathered from the interviews. And then that's what...
Celia, it seems we have lost the connection.
Hey, I think I just left the moment in which I was telling the conclusion. Sorry for that.
No worries.
Slide. We have 44 proposed policies or indicators. We have given priority to the ones that have double or triple duty potential. Those are like actually 40 out of 44. And we have pilot tested this index in 8 African countries. And of course, I would like to thank IDRC, all of the INFORMAS network, and my supervisor, Stephanie, and also the partners from APHRC and from the university in Senegal for all of their help.
Thank you so much, Celia. That was a very interesting and an insightful presentation.